Alarms blared throughout the underground command center as President Summers stared at the emergency broadcast. The hegemony attack on Mars had intensified, with alien ships bombing the main colony dome. "Civilian casualties are mounting, General," Harris reported grimly. "Our Mars defense fleet is outnumbered 3-1. Summers nodded solemnly. "It's time." He turned to his communications officer. "Send the activation code, Lazarus Protocol." The officer's eyes widened. "Sir, are you certain?" "Do it." Throughout the solar system, hidden installations began powering. Beneath the lunar surface, massive hangar doors slid open for the first time in decades. From the ice caps of Mars, the clouds of Venus, and deep asteroid bunkers came ships, hundreds of them, that had been built in absolute secrecy. These weren't the stealth vessels of Operation Hydra or the conventional warships of Earth's known fleet. These were something else entirely. Massive, angular vessels with technology far beyond what humanity had publicly acknowledged. Dr. Wright watched in awe from the command center as the hidden fleet emerged on their displays. "How long have we had these?" "Since we found the derelict," Summers replied quietly. "Reverse engineered from the ancient human technology. We always knew the hegemony might return someday." On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Miller received the Lazarus activation code with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Captain," Commander Foster said, "Lunar Fleet is launching. Designation, Guardian Force." Miller nodded. "About time. Status of Lieutenant Morgan?" "Still aboard the captured hegemony vessel. They've managed to get it moving and are headed toward our lines, but they're being pursued." Miller opened a secure channel. "All Earth forces, this is Captain Miller. The Lazarus Protocol is now active. Guardian Force will engage the hegemony main fleet. All other vessels concentrate on protecting civilian populations." She turned to her weapons officer. "Prepare a second singularity device. When that world breaker arrives, I want to be ready." Dr. Wright worked frantically in her makeshift laboratory, surrounded by data screens showing translations of the ancient human records recovered from the derelict ship. Commander Pierce stood nearby, reviewing. "Tactical updates. I've found something," Wright announced suddenly. "The ancient humans didn't just fight the hegemony, they almost destroyed them. But they didn't use superior weapons." Pierce moved closer. "Then how did they win?" "Tactics," Wright explained, pointing to translated battle records. "The hegemony uses a rigid command structure. All orders come from the top down. The ancient humans exploited this by using decentralized warfare, small independent units making decisions in the field. Guerrilla tactics," Pierce nodded, "but on a space warfare scale." "Exactly. And there's more." Wright pulled up another screen. "The hegemony ships all connect to a central command network. If that network is disrupted..." Pierce immediately grasped the implications. "They can't coordinate their attacks effectively." "We need to get this information to Captain Miller immediately," Wright said. Pierce was already moving toward the communications station. "And to Lieutenant Morgan. He's in the perfect position to disrupt their network from the inside." "Lieutenant." Morgan clutched the command chair as the stolen hegemony vessel shuddered under enemy fire. "Shields at 30%, Sergeant Reyes reported. "We can't take much more of this." Morgan studied the unfamiliar controls. They had managed to get the alien ship moving, but operating its weapon systems proved more challenging. "Sir," called one of his team monitoring communications. "Incoming message from Earth Command, Priority Alpha." Morgan listened carefully as Dr. Wright's discovery was relayed to him. A plan began forming in his mind. "Reyes, can we access the hegemony command network from this ship?" The sergeant nodded. "We should have the necessary access codes from the commander's console." "Good. Get me inside their network." Morgan turned to the rest of his team. "Change of plans. We're not running anymore. We're going to hit them where it hurts." The Guardian Force ships moved with surprising speed for their size, quickly positioning themselves between Mars and the approaching hegemony fleet. Their unusual design puzzled the alien commanders who couldn't identify their weapon systems or defensive capabilities. Aboard the inevitable Conquest, Grand Admiral Gilnar watched with growing concern. Where did these new vessels come from? He demanded. They were not in our intelligence reports. His tactical officer had no answers. Unknown, Admiral. Their energy signatures do not match any known human technology. They appear more advanced. Ambassador Zorvek studied the images with growing horror. Those designs, they resemble the ships from the ancient war. His voice dropped to a whisper. The humans have recovered their lost technology. The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. It changes nothing. The Worldbreaker will arrive soon. Order all ships to engage these new human vessels. But as he gave the command, something strange happened. Throughout the Hegemony fleet, communication systems began failing. Ship captains lost contact with each other and with the flagship. What's happening? Silnar demanded as his own systems flickered. Our command network is being compromised. His communications officer replied in panic. Someone is inside our systems transmitting conflicting orders to all vessels. Inside the stolen Hegemony ship, Morgan and his team worked rapidly. Using the access codes they had captured, they injected false commands into the enemy network, creating confusion throughout the alien fleet. It's working, Reyes reported with a grin. Their ships are breaking formation, some are even firing on each other. Morgan nodded in satisfaction. Now for Phase 2. He opened a channel to Captain Miller. Phoenix leader to Defiance. We're inside their network, ready to transmit the package. Miller's voice came through clearly. Understood, Phoenix leader. Guardian forces moving into position. Transmit when ready. Morgan nodded to Reyes, who uploaded a virus designed by Earth's best programmers, a digital weapon specifically engineered to target Hegemony systems. Package delivered, Morgan reported. Exiting the area now. Captain Miller watched as the Hegemony fleet fell into disarray. Ships moved in contradictory patterns, some firing weapons randomly, others going completely dark. The virus is working, Commander Foster reported. Their coordination is completely disrupted. Perfect timing, Miller replied. Look. On their main screen, a new contact appeared, massively larger than any previous vessel. The Worldbreaker had arrived. All ships clear the engagement zone, Miller ordered. Guardian Force execute planned intercept. The lunar fleet moved with precision toward the Worldbreaker. The massive weapon, shaped like an elongated cylinder with devastating energy projectors along its length, began charging its main systems. They're preparing to fire, Foster warned. Miller nodded grimly. Deploy the second singularity. The weapon launched, speeding toward the Worldbreaker, but this time the Hegemony was prepared. Point defense systems fired, attempting to intercept the human weapon. They're going to stop it, Foster said tensely. Miller watched calmly. No, they're not. At that moment, from the opposite direction, a second projectile approached, fired from one of the Guardian Force vessels. The Hegemony defenses, focused on the first threat, missed the second entirely. The singularity device detonated near the Worldbreaker's main power core. Space warped, gravity intensified, and the massive weapon began to collapse in on itself. Secondary explosions rippled along its length as its own energy systems catastrophically failed. Grand Admiral Shilnar watched in horror as his greatest weapon disintegrated before his eyes. Emergency alarms blared throughout his flagship as systems failed and power fluctuated. Admiral, his executive officer reported, the Worldbreaker is destroyed. 30% of our fleet is disabled. Another 20% is not responding. 2 commands. Shilnar slumped in his command chair. How? How could they defeat us so thoroughly? A new transmission cut through the chaos, broadcast on all frequencies bypassing their normal communication protocols. A human face appeared on the main screen. President Summers looked directly at the Thraxi Admiral. This is President Gregory. Summers of Earth. Your attack on our worlds has failed. Your weapon is destroyed. Your fleet is in disarray. We offer you one chance to withdraw your forces immediately. Shilnar stared at the human leader. And if we refuse? Summers' expression hardened. Then none of your ships will leave this system. Your choice, Admiral. Before Zilnar could respond, Ambassador Zorvek spoke up desperately. Accept their terms. You don't understand what we're facing. The ancient records warned us. Humans don't fight to conquer or subjugate. They fight to end threats, completely. Chill ran down Zilnar's spine as he realized the truth of the ambassador's words. He had never seen such effective tactics, such devastating weapons deployed with such precision. Very well, he said finally. We will withdraw. As the remaining hegemony vessels limped away from the solar system, President Summers stood on the observation deck of the orbital station above Earth. Beside him were Commander Pierce, Captain Miller, Lieutenant Morgan, and Dr. Wright, the heroes of what was already being called the First Contact War. They'll be back, Pierce said quietly, with a larger force next time. Perhaps, Summers replied, but they'll remember this defeat, and they'll tell others. Admiral John Lee stood at the window of the USS Freedom, watching the alien ships gather. His old face showed worry as he looked at the enemy fleet. The Zarkonian Empire had made a big mistake. They thought humans would give up after they attacked Moonbase 7. They were wrong. What's happening out there? Lee asked in a strong voice. Lieutenant Mary Davis pushed buttons on her screen. Sir, we see 37 Zarkonian warships lined up. They are getting ready to fire. How many ships do we have? 23 ships. Ready, Admiral. The Eagle, Brave, and Hunter are moving to the sides as planned. Lee nodded slowly. Humans had fewer ships and weaker guns than this alien race that had ruled space for over 3,000 years. The Zarkonians had beaten 17 different alien species and took over hundreds of planets. Everyone said their technology was much better than human technology, but they had never fought humans before. Connect me to all our ships, Lee ordered. Captain Steve White spoke up. Sir, the Zarkonians are sending a message. They want us to surrender now. Lee smiled a little. Let them talk. Connect me only to our ships. The communications officer nodded, and Lee fixed his uniform. This is Admiral Lee. The Zarkonians think they know war. They think having more ships and better guns means they will win. What they don't understand is that humans fight differently than any species they've met. He looked at each officer on the bridge. We have studied every war in human history. We have learned from every loss. We have grown stronger. The Zarkonians expect us to follow their rules of fighting. Instead, we will show them how humans really fight. Start Battle Plan 300. All across the human fleet, officers followed the order. The plan was risky, maybe even crazy, but it used what humans were best at: adapting, being unpredictable, and never giving up. On the main Zarkonian ship, High Commander Vextor looked at the human fleet with no respect. These simple beings had only figured out faster-than-light travel 100 years ago. Their ships were basic, their weapons old-fashioned. His mouth parts clicked as he laughed. They won't surrender, his second-in-command said. Of course not. Begin the attack. Standard Empire pattern. Vextor sat in his command chair. Let's finish this quickly. The Zarkonian ships moved together perfectly, their pattern flawless, from thousands of years of military practice. They expected the humans to either run away or attack head-on. Either way, they would lose. What happened next would change space warfare forever. The human ships scattered in all directions. The Zarkonians could still track them easily, but when they fired their energy weapons, the human ships released special clouds that weakened the beams. Then, 3 human ships crashed right into Zarkonian vessels, not to destroy them but to attach special boarding pods. What are they doing? Vextor shouted as reports came in. Are they killing their own ships? No, High Commander, his tactical officer said, shaking with fear. They're boarding us. Enemy soldiers are inside ships 7, 13, and 22. What happened next was something the Zarkonian Empire had never seen in 3,000 years of ruling space. Fighting inside the ships. While Zarkonian warriors were physically stronger, humans fought with fierce determination and clever thinking that shocked the Imperial forces. Back on the Freedom, Admiral Lee watched as the first part of their plan worked. How are our special forces teams doing? Teams have taken over the engine rooms on 2 vessels and are heading to weapons control, Captain White reported. Zarkonians are fighting hard, But our people came prepared. Lee nodded seriously. And Project Trojan? Ready? When you give the order, sir. The Admiral took a deep breath. This was the biggest risk. Months of secret research, billions of dollars, all for a weapon never used in real battle. The Zarkonians are reorganizing, Mary Davis reported. They're changing their pattern to fight our boarding teams. Lee nodded. They learn fast, but not fast enough. Launch Trojan. Across the battlefield, small, simple-looking drones launched from the human fleet. The Zarkonians barely noticed them on their sensors, thinking they were just space junk or distractions. The drones attached to the hulls of several Zarkonian warships and began sending special signals. Within minutes, 6 Zarkonian ships suddenly stopped firing. Their engines went dark. Then, amazingly, they turned their weapons on other Zarkonian vessels. What is happening? Vextor yelled as the reports came in. Some kind of cyber attack, High Commander. The humans have somehow taken control of our systems. Impossible. Our systems have the best protection. But the proof was right in front of them. The humans had found a weakness in Zarkonian systems that no one had ever exploited before. A weakness that shouldn't have existed. On the Freedom, Lee watched as confusion spread through the Zarkonian fleet. All ships begin Phase 3. The human fleet regrouped and launched a coordinated attack on the now disorganized Zarkonian forces. What had started as a hopeless last stand was becoming something else. Humanity's first victory against the biggest empire in the galaxy. As the battle ended with 9 Zarkonian ships destroyed, 7 captured, and the rest running away, Admiral Lee finally allowed himself to relax a little. Send a message to Earth, he ordered. Tell them humans just rewrote the rules of space warfare. Main meeting room, Zarkonian Imperial Palace, 3 days after the battle. The room was quiet except for the occasional clicking sounds, a sign of great worry among the Zarkonian leaders. 7 high counselors sat in a half circle, their shiny, outer shells reflecting the dim blue light of the room. In the center stood High Commander Vextor, standing straight despite his injuries. Tell us again, Emperor Zalthax said, his voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of winning. Every battle. How did a simple species defeat an Imperial battle group? Vextor's mouth parts shook slightly before he controlled himself. The humans used fighting methods we have never seen before, Your Highness. They did not fight according to any normal rules of war. Tell us more, asked Science Counselor Nexria, her many eyes narrowing. They gave up ships to board ours, fighting inside our ships where our better weapons didn't work well. Their soldiers... Vextor paused. Their soldiers fought without caring if they lived or died. And they used some kind of technology attack that took over our ship systems. That's not possible. Nexria clicked in disbelief. Our systems are safe. Military Counselor Kravzak leaned forward. Yet the proof is clear. 7 Imperial warships taken, 9 destroyed, the rest forced to run away. He looked at Vextor with his many eyes. And the prisoners? We took none, Counselor. Vextor admitted. Our forces fought until they all died. A wave of worry passed through the room. The Zarkonian Empire had strict rules for giving up when defeat was certain. Saving lives and knowledge was most important. That their forces chose death over capture said a lot. What do we know about these humans? The Emperor demanded. Intelligence. Counselor Melzar turned on a 3D display. Humans come from a planet they call Earth, 3rd from their star. They started space travel only 300 years ago, and faster than light travel just 94 years ago. The display showed pictures of human civilization, their cities, their ships, their weapons. Their technology is simple compared to ours. Melzar continued. Their society is divided and not organized. They have no single government, but work as a loose group called the Earth Alliance. They have only settled 27 worlds. Yet, they beat our ships, the Emperor said flatly. Yes, Your Highness, our study suggests several worrying things. First, humans evolved as hunters on a high-gravity planet with extreme weather. They have amazing endurance and can adapt to anything. The display changed to show human military history. More worrying is their history of warfare. Unlike most species who became more peaceful as they got better technology, humans kept fighting wars among themselves until very recently. They have thousands of years of non-stop military growth. Science counselor Nexria clicked thoughtfully. This suggests they know more about fighting than their technology level would show. Exactly, Melzar confirmed. And there is one more thing. Messages. We caught suggest this was not their main fleet. Admiral John Lee, who led their forces, called this a frontier defense action. The room filled with worried clicking sounds. Are you saying, the Emperor silenced them, that we were beaten by just a small part of their military? That seems to be true, Your Highness. Also, we have seen unusual activity in human space. They appear to be getting ready for a big war. On the colony world of New Virginia, Governor Bill Green stood before the Emergency Council. The colony, home to 6 million humans, was at the edge of explored space, directly in the path of any Zarkonian counterattack. The Earth Alliance has ordered full military readiness, Green announced to the gathered leaders. Admiral Lee's victory has given us time, but the Zarkonians will come back, and with more ships. Council member Nancy Hill, head of colony defense, nodded grimly. Evacuation plans? Moving forward, but we won't get everyone out in time. The Alliance is sending help, but they're 2 weeks away. Science Director Joe Carter stood up. What about Project SHIELD? The room went quiet. Project SHIELD had been called too experimental, too dangerous to use. Green waited before answering. Alliance Command has given permission. All limits removed. Later that night, as Governor Green stood in the colony's defense center, he watched as normal people became an army. Doctors, teachers, farmers, all stepping up to defend their home. It reminded him of stories his grandfather told about old human wars, where ordinary people became amazing fighters when protecting their homes. How is the defense system, he asked. Colonel Kate Wilson recently arrived from Earth to organize defense, checked her tablet. 60% working. The civilian volunteers are doing amazing work. And Project SHIELD? Wilson's face darkened. Dr. Carter says it will be ready. Whether it works the way we want is another question. Green nodded. Have you ever fought the Zarkonians before, Colonel? No, sir. But I've studied every second of video from Admiral Lee's battle. And what do you think? Wilson looked at him firmly. They're strong, organized, and have better technology. But they fight like they've never faced a real challenge. They have rules but can't adapt. 3,000 years of easy wins makes for lazy warriors. And us? Humans never had it easy, sir. Every win in our history was hard fought. We've learned from every loss. She smiled grimly. The Zarkonians are about to get a lesson. Back in the Imperial Palace, the Zarkonian High Council had made a decision. We will send the 3rd Imperial Fleet, Emperor Zalthax declared. 100 warships under Grand Marshal Zexkir. The humans must learn what happens when they defy the Empire. Military Counselor Kravzak bowed. What are your orders about the human worlds, Your Highness? The Emperor's many eyes glowed coldly. Make an example of their frontier colonies, no survivors. As the council meeting ended, Science Counselor Nexria approached Intelligence Counselor Melzar in a private hallway. You kept information from the council meeting, she said quietly. Melzar's mouth parts clicked once to show she was right. Information that would cause panic if everyone knew. Tell me. We caught a message from Human Military Command. After studying the battle, their response was a single phrase: release the wolves. Nexria's antennas shook. What does that mean? We don't know. But historical study suggests it refers to top predators being let loose. Melzar paused. There is one other detail. The humans have a saying that has been sent more and more among their military channels, which is, the sleeping giant has been awakened. Grand Marshal Zexkir stood on the command deck of the Zarkonian battleship Eternal Glory, the biggest warship in the 3rd Imperial Fleet. 100 warships gathered before him, a force that had conquered entire star systems without losing a single ship. We will reach the human colony called New Virginia in 30 minutes. his second officer reported. No big defense fleet detected. Zexkier clicked his mouthparts in happiness. The simple humans leave their colonists to die, while they prepare their defenses elsewhere. So predictable. There are strange energy readings from the planet's surface, Grand Marshal. Just their defense systems. Simple technology. Zexkier waved away the concern. Attack in standard conquest pattern. I want control of orbit in 10 minutes after arrival. The officer paused. Should we not try different tactics after what happened to High Commander Vextor's fleet? Zexkier's many eyes stared at the officer. Vextor was careless and underestimated the humans. I will not make the same mistake. We have 5 times more ships than any human defense force. The result is certain. On New Virginia, Colonel Kate, Wilson stood in the Planetary Defense Center, surrounded by military personnel and civilian volunteers working on quickly assembled equipment. Zarkonian fleet approaching, announced a young lieutenant. 100 vessels, including what looks like a battleship-class ship. Governor Bill Green took a sharp breath. God help us. Wilson's face remained determined. Status of shield? Dr. Joe Carter answered from his station. Online and ready. But Colonel, this technology has never been used at this scale. It's our only chance, Wilson replied. All defense grid operators, get ready for manual targeting. Remember your training. Shield will create openings, but you'll need to make the shots count. A civilian volunteer who used to be a high school physics teacher looked up nervously. They're entering orbit. Standard Imperial conquest pattern, just as you predicted. Wilson nodded. They're following their 3,000-year-old rulebook. So predictable. She took a deep breath. Start shield. On the surface of New Virginia and in its orbit, hundreds of simple-looking satellites and ground stations activated at the same time. Instead of normal weapons, they began sending out carefully tuned gravity pulses. Aboard the Eternal Glory, the first sign that something was wrong came when navigation officers reported instrument failures. Some kind of interference, one reported. Adjusting sensors. Grand Marshal Zexkier felt slightly dizzy, unusual for his species' excellent sense of balance. What is happening? Before anyone could answer, the ship jerked violently. Across the fleet, vessels began drifting out of formation, their precise movements disrupted by invisible forces. Gravity anomalies! The science officer shouted. The humans are somehow changing local gravity fields! Zexkier gripped his command chair as the massive battleship shuddered. Impossible! Such technology requires multiple human vessels detected. The tactical officer interrupted. They were hidden by the gravity distortions. From behind New Virginia's moon and from within its dense asteroid belt emerged 40 human warships, smaller than their Zarkonian counterparts, but moving with amazing agility through the disrupted gravity landscape. How are they navigating in these conditions? Zexkier demanded. The answer became clear as the human ships launched their attack. Unlike the Zarkonians, who relied heavily on automated systems for precision formation flying, human vessels were mostly manually controlled. Their pilots, used to operating in varying conditions, adapted to the gravity chaos with remarkable skill. Colonel Wilson watched from the command center as the battle unfolded above. Shield is working. Their fleet is disorganized. Our ships are engaging, Governor Green noted, watching the tactical display, but they're still outnumbered. Numbers aren't everything, Wilson replied. Execute Phase 2. From New Virginia's surface, a new weapon activated. Not missiles or energy beams, but targeted electromagnetic pulses, precisely calibrated to the frequencies used by Zarkonian systems. The pulses were weak by normal standards, but combined with the gravity distortions, they created a perfect storm of disruption for the Imperial fleet's integrated combat systems. On the Eternal Glory, chaos ruled. Weapons targeting offline, reported the tactical officer. Communications disrupted. Half the fleet can't receive orders. Zexkier watched in disbelief as the coordinated human attack tore through his disorganized forces. How? How are they doing this? The science officer, working frantically at his console, looked up with his compound eyes wide. They're not using better technology, Grand Marshal. They've studied our systems and found exactly how to disrupt them with their inferior, but precisely calibrated weapons. Impossible. Our technology is the best in the galaxy. Yes, the officer replied, and it has remained largely unchanged for centuries. The humans studied it, found its weaknesses, and exploited them perfectly. As the battle continued, the human ships performed maneuvers that no Zarkonian commander would have tried. High-risk, unpredictable attacks that sacrificed optimal efficiency for tactical surprise. They targeted command ships specifically, cutting off the rigid Zarkonian command structure and forcing individual ship commanders to make independent decisions, something they were poorly trained to do. Admiral Ben Murphy, commanding the human fleet from the battleship Constellation, coordinated the attack with cold precision. "Status report," he ordered. 27 Zarkonian vessels disabled or destroyed. His tactical officer reported. "We've lost 8 ships. The gravity distortions from S.H.I.E.L.D. are beginning to affect our systems as well." Murphy nodded. "As expected. Order all ships to switch to backup navigation and release the wolves." From the Constellation's launch bays, dozens of small, agile craft emerged. Each carried only 2 crew members, a pilot and a weapons officer. The craft, officially called Tactical Space Superiority, fighters but nicknamed wolves by their crews, had been considered inefficient by Zarkonian military doctrine. Too small to carry powerful weapons, too fragile to survive direct hits. They had been dismissed as a primitive approach to space combat. The Zarkonians were about to learn their mistake. The wolf fighters darted between the massive Zarkonian warships, exploiting blind spots in their defensive systems. They didn't target the ships directly. Instead, they focused on external sensors, communication arrays, and weapon emplacements. Like wolves taking down larger prey by attacking its legs, they systematically disabled the Zarkonian vessels' ability to coordinate and fight effectively. Grand Marshal Zexkir watched in horror as his magnificent fleet was reduced to a collection of individual ships fighting for survival. "Order all vessels to retreat and regroup," he commanded. "Communications still disrupted, sir," his officer replied. "Only 30% of the fleet can receive orders." For the first time in his long military career, Zexkir felt a sensation alien to his species. Fear. Not for himself, but fear that he faced an enemy beyond his understanding. "Launch our fighters," he ordered. "Counter those small craft. Our fighter pilots have minimal combat experience, Grand Marshal. They've never faced a real enemy. Then they will learn, or they will die." The Zarkonian fighters launched, technically superior to the human wolves in every measurable way. But as they engaged in the chaotic battlespace, their pilots' inexperience became glaringly apparent. The human pilots flew with an aggression and adaptability that shocked their opponents. They used the gravity distortions to execute maneuvers that defied normal physics, while the Zarkonian pilots struggled to operate outside their training parameters. On New Virginia, Colonel Wilson received the update with grim satisfaction. Their fighters are deployed. Execute Phase 3. Across the battlefield, the human forces suddenly adopted a new tactic. The wolf fighters regrouped into tight formations and charged directly at the Zarkonian dreadnought Eternal Glory. "They're on a suicide run," Governor Green exclaimed. "No," Wilson corrected. "They're executing a howling run. Watch." The wolf fighters approached the massive dreadnought at maximum speed, drawing all available defensive fire. At the last possible moment, they scattered in precisely planned patterns, revealing a second wave of attackers behind them. Specialized boarding craft. Grand Marshal Zexkir realized the humans' intention too late. Divert all defensive fire to those boarding craft. But the wolves had done their job, drawing away defensive fire and destroying key defense systems. 10 boarding craft hit the Eternal Glory's hull, cutting through with specialized breaching equipment. From each craft emerged 20 human soldiers in powered combat armor. Unlike the standard military units the Zarkonians had faced before, these were special forces operators, the elite of human military capability. Their armor enhanced their already formidable physical abilities, and they carried weapons specifically designed to combat Zarkonian physiology. The boarding parties moved through the massive ship with practiced precision, heading for critical systems, engineering, weapons control, and the bridge. The Zarkonian crew, though physically stronger and equipped with advanced weapons, found themselves outmatched in the close quarters of their own vessel. How? Zexkir demanded as reports of the boarders' progress flooded in. How are they defeating our warriors?